Mike Woods from Arlington Soccer on today, the Nova Legends podcast, just to give Mike a little sense of what we're doing. We've been interviewing a lot of the sports stars and personalities of Northern Virginia sports, lots of basketball players mainly, but lately I've been doing a lot of soccer, other sports and track and field, and not just necessarily stars, but just folks who tell us a little bit about the different sports, what's going on, helpful information for parents and players as well. I talked to Tommy Park at Alexandria Soccer a few months ago, and Mike Woods has been a longtime coach, player. He's got four kids that played Arlington Soccer. So I wanted to get another perspective. So Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Oh, well, great. Well, last year, Coach, your son, obviously Nathan, plays with my son Chandler at Yorktown. And we were playing against Washington and Liberty, a game. And I looked at the rosters and I was just thinking that about 9 or 10 years ago, these kids all tried out for soccer at a tryout, and you were involved in it. And at that point last year at that game, maybe I guess 10 or 15 of them were still playing for their high school team. Mm-hmm. And there were probably 250 kids trying out or so, maybe 45 or so made the travel team. And these are the kids that are still playing today, or at least playing at a high level today. And you had two others that played high school, travel, high school, and on to the next level. And then you have one more behind Nate that's still going through it. What made Nate and I guess Chandler stick with it? When you're a parent and you have a kid playing sports, what is the key for the kid staying for so long, enjoying it and prospering? What do you think it was that kept your kids playing soccer for so long and enjoying it?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's one size that fits all. I know Nate is an exceptionally competitive kid, and I think he just loves to compete. I think it's a combination of factors. If you have some success, if the player is doing well, it doesn't mean you have to always be on the top team. But if you are, playing a fair amount, I think the coaches around you, I think, if you have coaches that are encouraging, it's a positive environment, and honestly, what happens at home has I've been coaching for 25 years, and, how the parents handle things at home, I think plays a part as well, how the kid sees himself or herself. And, if the parents are putting too much pressure, if it's fun, at the end of the day, you always see a big drop off where the kids quit. It depends on the girls and boys side, but usually around 8th, 9th, 10th grade. And you'll see players decide, I'm going to go do cross country, or I'm just going to play basketball. And that's really where I've seen it, mostly like 9th grade. Once they get into high school, maybe it's when they get their driver's permit. I don't know, but they start to sort out what they want to do. But and I think at that juncture, they have the freedom. They feel like they have the freedom from their parents. They can make their own decision to an extent that in their, maybe they're rebelling, who knows. But I think it has to do with, are they having fun? Are they having some success? Do they enjoy their teammates? A lot of these teams, there's a lot of turnover. And so they have new teammates every year as well. And so the old days where you stayed on the same team the whole time, when I was playing, have changed a bit. So it's probably a combination of factors.
Have you learned a lot from, first of all, the kids that already went through the travel process, but also the parents that you have to deal with on the teams that you've coached? Have you learned a lot? And have you become a better soccer parent over the years?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, honestly, one of the people that I learned the most from was Coach TJ White, who's got a few more years than I do of experience. And one of the things that TJ said was, taught me, you have to put your ego aside, and, it's got to be about the kids. It's got to be about the players. And when you can do that, then you'll relax a little bit more. I mean, we're in a very competitive area, right? Northern Virginia, one of the most competitive areas in the country. And so everybody's competing in, whether it be sports, academics, what have you. So I think learning that was one thing. And as a parent, you kind of, you see a lot of what not to do. And then you see the great parents as well, who have the right perspective. And you kind of have to realize, what it's all about. And it's really about your son or daughter's, the fun quotient, are they enjoying what they're doing? To be honest, the majority of these kids are not going to play professional. It's such a small, minority of group that will actually play professional.
Or even collegiate.
What's that?
Or even
college. Yeah. And even that is difficult. And honestly, some of the kids, they go and they play, 4 years and they get burned out and they don't play in the adult leagues after they graduate because they're just so burned out. And then we talk about this, is it worth it? My oldest, he's playing in all kinds of adult leagues right now and loving it. He just graduated last year from college. So,
Well, I think people should know that you're actually a native Arlington. You played at Arlington. You played travel soccer in Arlington. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background, where you were raised, and how you got involved in soccer?
yeah, I've moved about 3 miles from where I grew up. So I still live in Arlington. Back then I was a 68. We did everything in the, used to be a calendar year, which it is again now. I was on, back then there was 2 teams in Arlington. Every age group had a North Arlington team and a South Arlington. So I was on the South Arlington Shooting Stars, and grew up playing. We played rec. I would play for the Arlington Kiwanis. Our rec team was our travel team, and we played rec all the way through 8th grade. And then I played rec. I played for Kenmore Middle School, and we had a middle school team. Played at WNL High School, and played for the South Arlington Shooting Stars the entire time. The same team my entire career. Then I went on to play club at UVA.
Was the Arlington soccer program that exists now, was it in business back then too, or is it different?
It's the same program. It's just changed dramatically.
Right. Okay.
I think it got established in 1970 or 71. I can't remember the exact year. Early 70s is when it was first founded.
Now, my guess is the demographics have probably changed a lot. So, like when I was young, most Black athletes didn't play soccer unless they were African or Caribbean. They played baseball still. They played a lot of football and basketball. Soccer was, wasn't the most diverse sport in some regard. And then I know Arlington itself, the demographics have changed so much. There's a lot of Latinos that play soccer in Arlington and live in Arlington. Have the demographics changed since when you played soccer for Arlington?
Not really. I mean, my team was, we were all different demographics. I mean, there was people from Greece, African American, Hispanic, France. That's actually where I learned this kid came over from France, and we didn't know the numbers for all the positions. And he couldn't say I play center mid or fullback or, striker. He's like, I play the number 10, and we didn't know the numbers, back then those terms weren't, prevalent around here. But yeah, we had kids from all over. My team did, at least. So I don't think that's, for me personally, it hasn't changed dramatically. And going to WNL, which is, being in Arlington, it's a very transient area. And so we had people from different nationalities all the time. I mean, that was pretty consistent for me my entire career. I guess now it's changed a bit. Arlington's changed over a little bit, but Arlington's also become a destination point as a travel club. And so there's kids from all over, not just for living in Arlington, that are playing for the club.
Oh, okay. So, you had a long career as a coach, 25 years as a coach for Arlington. Were the coaches that you had as a youth that influenced your coaching today?
Yes, from wanting to do it, and in the competitiveness and just enjoying. And I had my one coach, he would drive and pick up all the kids. We'd have these 6 or 7 kids in the back of his car to go to games. And, we didn't have matching backpacks. We didn't have benches. We didn't have tents. We'd had like a Safeway bag was our soccer bag, and he would go and pick everybody up. So he did. Jim Sigris was his name. Called him the Secret Squirrel. He was one of the funniest guys. He's one of my best friend's dads, and but he didn't have an influence. He kind of got me into. I ended up like helping him when I was like a senior in high school, I think, or maybe I was in college. He started coaching his daughter's team after his son graduated with me. And so I started helping then in the beginning. That's when I first kind of got the bug, just helping him out and just enjoying and seeing his passion. He loved it. He did it he ended up being a referee for like 45 years. And he just was so passionate about coaching and loved doing it. So I think that had an effect on me for sure.
Were you as good a player as your sons are?
No. But I think it's hard for anybody at my age to be as good as the kids are these days. The facilities they have, the coaching around here, and all the coaching clinics and courses, and there's just so many more opportunities. These kids are so much more talented than we were at the same age.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier that you went to UVA and you played club soccer. What is club soccer at the college level? And for folks that don't know, I mean, obviously, Division One soccer, there are scholarships available. Generally, soccer scholarships aren't full scholarships, but there's money available. Division Three soccer, generally in Virginia, there's no money given for soccer, but there could be other types of grants given. And Division Two could be scholarships, even though there's not very many Division Two schools around here. But as you were telling me the other day on our call, there are club opportunities at different colleges, which is great for some of these high level players at clubs.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot. The funny thing is, I played club at UVA, had to try out. We traveled a little bit, but it wasn't as organized as it is now. And so my two oldest sons play. My one just graduated. He played on UVA club. He was actually the president of it. But at UVA, it's student run. There's no coach, so the kids coach themselves. And now it's great. You don't have the commitment of a varsity sport. They still practice. They have a regional tournament, and they have a national tournament. So my oldest, he got to go out to Arizona and to compete in the national tournament. And then he went to the next year, he got to go to Foley, Alabama, which is on the Gulf. So my wife and I went down there and saw it. It was incredible. They're playing Michigan, they're playing BYU, North Carolina, Pitt, and all these different schools come in with their gear. And it's almost like travel soccer on steroids. And then you have a little bit of the school kind of, the college feel of it. So both my boys loved it. I had a great time, but when I was there and the club was just, that concept I think was just starting and it wasn't as organized. Now there's like a whole national aspect of it, but they, like I said, they practice, they play in the weekends, they go, UVA plays Tech and JMU and schools that are close. And then they go and they play NC State and those types of schools in the regionals.
If the varsity team had injuries, would they consider using the club players to fill out the roster for a particular week?
Well, I think Jack's team played the women's team, the UVA varsity women's team one time or twice. He did. UVA had lost a lot of kids to the MLS draft a few years ago, right before the pandemic, and they needed 3 players. So they did go to the club team, and my son had to try out, and he made the team. And so he was because they have a abbreviated spring season. And so they needed like 3 more players so they could scrimmage like 11v11, I think. So he was technically on the team for a couple of weeks, and then the pandemic shut it down. So they did go to the club and club team, and they didn't just pick them; they had to go try out. But they picked up 3 kids from that club team for the spring season.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Generally, what would be the cost of college club soccer? If you know, and what would the general cost be for?
I actually don't know, but I don't think it's very expensive. A couple $100. I don't think I paid the bill. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about. So you graduate from UVA. Tell us how you end up coaching for Arlington.
Well, the first thing I did back in, 91 or 92, somehow I got pulled in to help coach at WNL, the girls varsity team. I knew the head coach. She was at WNL when I was there, and Neil Richardson, his brother and I played together. Neil played at USF. Him and I were assistant coaches at WNL. So I did that for 2 years. I helped the varsity team out as assistants. And then I tore my knee up. I tore my ACL a couple of years after that. And so I wasn't playing. I was, was kind of rehabbing and all that. And someone came up to me, I don't remember what year, is it 95, 96, and said, "Hey, you want to coach travel soccer and we'll pay you a little bit." And I'm like, okay. And then that I got involved and, been hooked ever since. And this kind of become, my side hustle. I got a day job, but just loved it and just kept on, learning and I was fortunate to be surrounded by a ton of great coaches and just got hooked on it, got the bug.
Who's been the biggest influences on the way you coach and your style of play? The big coaches could be Arlington coaches or could be, professional coaches that you read about.
I'd say, some of the coaches that are, really had a lot of effect. TJ White, like I said, had a huge effect on me. Him and I coached together for 9 years straight. And we had some one of our teams we didn't have them at that time. We passed them on. Not that we got them there, but they were the first Arlington team to get to nationals. And I think they got to the national final. I always say we didn't get them to the national final, but we didn't mess them up. And then, and a lot of those kids went on to play college ball. They were a very talented group. So learned a lot from TJ. Grant Smith, his sister Gail, are two other good influences on me. Eddie Lima. I'm sure I'm leaving some people out. Got to work with Frank DeMarco, Chris Smith. Some of these guys have been around for quite a while in Arlington.
Let's talk a lot about league structure. Now, one of the frustrations that I've always had with soccer is that you just don't play good players down the road in the county or in the area. You have all these great players and great teams, and they're all in different silos, different leagues, and they you may have a McLean and Arlington team, and they'll never play in the same league. It might be in completely different leagues. My son played in a team called Barca, had some good players. We would never play these teams around here. We have a whole different set of teams that we played. Can we talk a little bit about the evolution of leagues? I know there was always the NCSL that was kind of like a league where all the DC area teams played, and they had a structure like a ladder, 1 to 9 or whatever, and teams would move up and down that ladder. And then I know later on there came a CCL, which kind of put other teams around the state into play. So like teams like Roanoke and Virginia Beach teams, Beach FC, they can now have good teams to play, and it really helped them a lot. And teams like Arlington were involved in that as well. And then you had the DA academies that came in like 2013, 14 or so. And later on we had ECNL, which is another high level travel league. And then now we have MLS next. So that's kind of the rough, kind of the outline. But what did I miss there? What are kind of the evolutions of the leagues that you've seen over the years?
Well, that is kind of the evolution for sure. I'm personally not. I'm curious if it made things better, to be honest. When I was first coaching, there was WAGs and NCSL. WAGs on the girls' side, NCSL on the boys' side. VCCL, I think CCL was called VCCL or something like that because it was Virginia before it changed its name, and the Northern Virginia teams joined it. But back then, Division I, the top 3 teams in Division I in WAGs or NCSL, all those kids went on to play like D1 soccer. That was the cream of the crop. Now it becomes kind of a arms war. Like I can't even keep. Every year there's a new league, and it almost seems like money's driving it or something. I don't know if it's necessarily making U.S. soccer better. I'm not 100% sure. I think the way it was before was fine because the talent in DC, Maryland, Virginia, Northern Virginia is incredible. Why do we have to have 10 leagues? Just keep it like it was, whatever you name the league, and have those teams play, play each other. One of the reasons they broke up was the way NCSL and WAGs were kind of run. It wasn't super conducive they were very structured and rigid in their processes, and one of the great things about CCL when that was created, or when we joined it, was one club would play another club. And so the idea was good. You have one club playing another club. And so the younger kids can watch the older kids, and everybody create like a community. That's, kind of, it hasn't completely figured out because not everybody has a big complex to host all the teams. But that was one good thing. And then just having a little bit more flexibility in schedule and changes and stuff with the group, that the leadership that's running the league. In the past, like the club pass, where you could have somebody on a B team play with the A team or vice versa. You couldn't do that back in the day with NCSL and WAGs. And that's why, like Todd hit with RFC, he left. He was one of the first people when he created RFC, Wrestling Football Club. He took the club and they got out of NCSL and WAGs because I think he was frustrated with some of what I'm talking about, these rules, the rigidity, and he went into CCL. And then later these Northern Virginia teams came in there and some other things added. But it seems like it's watered everything down. It's affected ODP. And so there's not one place to go and look for the best players, and all the best players aren't playing each other as well. So I'm not 100% sure if it's made things better. I question that a little bit compared to the way it used to be.
Yes, yeah, you said watered down. That's a frustration we have. My son, your son's teammate, he played for a club last year that was in the CCL in Alexandria, and CCL was very strong, and he played U19, so he was in the younger part of that age group. Well, this year they went MLS next, so if you played, you couldn't play high school. Theoretically, who knows whether they're going to actually enforce that. So he ended up going to another club because he wanted to have the flexibility to play high school, and he didn't have a chance to try out for like for example, Arlington, because his high school team was playing every night during tryouts. But you're in the situation where you have to choose what league you're going to be in, what team you're going to be in without knowing too much. So anyway, so we end up being an ECNL regional league, which is not the ECNL league, which is a very high level travel, but the ECNL league is made up of, I guess it was called the VPL, plus some of the high level CCL teams join. So it's a solid league, but it's watered down in that you don't have all the best teams there anymore. And then you have Nate, your son plays for an ECNL team, very high league, but they don't play the MLS Next team at Alexandria or SYC, or I guess they call it Union now. So you have all these kids are good players, and they're having to choose what league. And I think we mentioned on the call, there are some times where the college opportunities might be different depending upon the league and the team that you choose. So it seems like this is really hurting the ability of kids to get exposure, and they're having to make these choices, without having a lot of information.
I agree. I think it's made it very difficult. I mean, even as a parent, should my kid go play for this team or this team? And then they change leagues. Arlington's changed leagues a few times. Then the DA gets turned off, and now it's become MLS Next. And there was a lot of uncertainty what was going to happen there. So it has made it difficult. I mean, back in the day, it was you played WAGs or NCSL, and that was it. And you might do ODP on the side. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about college now. Not to get too personal, but like your son Nate is a very high level player, and he's played a DA, which is development academies, which was U.S. Soccer's way of trying to funnel the best players towards certain academies. He played DA, he played on the highest level of Arlington travel. He's a very good player, and right now he's looking at different offers. What are the prospects for high level players to play in college? And just to kind of tee this up even more, last year Yorktown played in the regional final. They played South Lakes. They had the player of the year in the region, Carter Berg, and he may have been even two-time player of the year in the region. He had signed with Mary Washington, Division III school, which is no scholarship. One of the top returning players on our team this year is Tristan Kickbush. He signed early with Mary Washington as well, Division III, no money, but this is a very talented Division III team, top 10 team. What are the prospects for players at the next level? And is this COVID related? Is the challenges that we're talking about now, are they maybe the timing of COVID and what's going on now?
There's a couple things in here. I think it's a little bit, there are many parts to this. One, from what I've seen, there's a lot more international players playing. You see some of these rosters on some of these D1 teams, and I go and look at some of the rosters, and you see more and more international players. So that takes spots away from the kids that are in the US. And then two, there's a couple things that COVID that affected the current, the last two, and maybe next year as well, is one, everybody got an extra year of eligibility. So some of these kids they're playing in their fifth year this past year. So the roster spots are smaller. So that affected things. And then thirdly, there were less events. At the end of the day, the college coaches, they don't go to high school games. They don't even go to a regular travel game. They have, I assume they have very limited recruiting budgets. So they're going to go to big events where they can see many kids in one full swoop. So I think that affected it. Back in the day, Disney was a big deal. Now there's MLS has a last summer, I think they had a big event as well, and there's a lot of coaches there. But do the coaches go to there, or do they go to regionals, or do they go to nationals, or do they go to state cup and watch the games there? It's also, that's the other part of it being spread out. So I think it's numerous factors in there, but there's so many good players, and it's tough. It's really tough to get a D1 spot. There's not that many openings, and there's so many kids playing these days. So and they're not going to take a kid they haven't seen. So they have to see that player somewhere, some event.
So last year on senior night at Yorktown, when they introduced the starting lineup, we had a lot of great players on our team, as you know. You coached many of them. None of them were going to playing soccer at the next level. And it was very surprising to me. And it was almost an eye opener. And that just shows you the struggle with, players like Luke Newell and I mean, all of them. They're all really nice players. And they'd all had decided to go to the best academic institution they can get into.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, it is what it is. And I just think the kids and parents are going to have to make decisions that's best for them, and it might not involve soccer. Well, one of the other things that's developed over the years is personal training, one-on-one trainers. So, my son, as you know, is trained with Coach Othman from Arlington for many years, probably almost 8 or 9 years now, and it's just maybe once a month, maybe twice a month thing where he works with them, and it's been great for him. And it's a way to focus your training and really give a guy ownership and a knowledgeable coach ownership in him, and give him things to work on. It's been great. It's been tremendous for Chandler. When we first started doing that, we would go to the field, and we may see one other coach with a player, personal training. Now, if you go to any field in the right time, you will see little patches of ground with personal trainers everywhere. What are your thoughts about one-on-one training, and do you recommend it for most players?
It's never a bad thing, right? It depends on what your goals are, and I think that's at the end of the day. We used to have the parent kickoff meeting at U9. And I remember some of the messages TJ and I would give the parents. We'd say, look around. It's almost like look around you. It's not going to be this at U19. By the time your kid is a sophomore or even ninth grader in high school, the team will not look exactly the same. So the team looks like this today. It'll look completely different then, which has held completely true. Like Nate's travel team, there's maybe 2 kids that he played with at U9 on that same team. So, and with the other thing that we would tell parents then is if you really think your kid's going to play in college, you might want to spend all that money on, trying to get a scholarship, or just putting it away and put it in a 529, because the scholarships, like we said before, they're far and few between. They're out there, but they're not easy to get. So with that being said, though, I think the training is good. I mean, the other thing is, I would always tell, we're in the most competitive area. And if your kid is doing if the kid really wants to do really well and play at the highest levels, if you're only going to the 2 practices or 3 practices a week and that's it, there's going to be another kid that's doing that. And like you're talking about, that's doing individual training and juggling on their own. Who's going to most likely going to get better? The kid that's putting all this extra time in. So it's like what Malcolm Gladwell's, 1,000 hours or whatever that saying is. So I'm all for it. I don't think there's any issue with it. I do think, if depending on how good your kid is and what their aspirations is, if they're not aspirations aren't super high, I wouldn't spend a ton of money on it, and pay like a crazy hourly rate for it. Because I think at the end of the day, it's touches on the ball. It's no different from in basketball, the kids playing pickup all the time. You learn just as much from that as you do just from, the drills one-on-one are kind of difficult sometimes, but it's the repetition that's the most important thing in my book. So yeah, I'm all for it. And you're seeing more and more of the trainers, because you're seeing more and more coaches make a living out of soccer coaching. When I first started coaching, I might have got paid for the whole year like $1,000 or $2,000. I don't remember what it is. It is it's become a big money sport now. So the coaches get paid a lot more, and they can actually have a career just coaching. So they'll do their teams, and then they'll cobble together some of this individual training and some other things, which is another reason why I think you're seeing a lot of these coaches doing additional training, because it's another means to supplement their income.
Well, you mentioned ODP and Super Y earlier. How do they fit into the puzzle?
Well, ODP's changed a lot. I remember when they had an ODP Academy, and that was a big deal. I think my oldest boys played in that. And it used to be at Virginia Highlands in Arlington.
Hold on for a second. ODP is Olympic Development Program, right? Olympic Development.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Back in the day, that was the way I think the intent, back to when I was younger, to feed the national team, was because you had a district team, then you had a state team, then you had a regional team, then you had a national team. So that the influence and the top players, less and less of them are going to ODP. The kids that are going to ODP now seem to be kids that live in areas in the state of Virginia, for instance, that don't have a DA, a Development Academy equivalent type place to play. So there is a place for it still, and there are some good players in there. And again, it's repetition. You want to play. It's fun. My three of my boys did it. Two of my boys got to go. They have an international trip, and so they got selected for that. So that was cool. Not that it was more cool. They just got to go overseas and play soccer overseas against some international teams. You know, it wasn't anything that they learned something in a week. You can't learn that much in a week of playing, but they got a cool opportunity. Maybe they could write about it on their college essay. I don't know, but it was a great opportunity. So that's one of the perks. That's really fun. But I think you also meet a lot of other kids in the state and kids from other clubs, and it is, as you get the funnel goes like this with the players dropping off, you know, and you start to see the same kids in the same places. And ODP is one of those places where my kids would know this kid, and this kid, because they played ODP together, even though they never played club together. So it gets that together. Super Y for me is just, it's in the summer. It's held during the summer. It's just another league. They have the big draw. One of the big draws is if you qualify, there's a national championship in Florida in December typically. So if you qualify, you get to go to that, which is fun. But it's just, it's become another training opportunity throughout the summer. So you get 2 practices a week in a game. And they might mix the teams a little bit. So it's not the exact same team you had in the fall or spring, but just another opportunity to play. You know, I don't know if this, you know, and maybe get coached by a different coach, which I think is always good to be exposed to multiple different coaches.
Well, how about futsal? So my son was a pretty solid futsal player, but after a while he didn't like playing as much because he said, "Dad, when you play futsal, you don't have to check your shoulders that much because you know it's only 3 or 4 other teammates and opponents on the floor, and it kind of changes the way as a midfielder. I don't want to think that way anymore." So he didn't want to keep playing futsal, but he liked it when he was younger. What is your view on futsal in terms of development?
Well, I can tell you all the Brazilian coaches I've coached with, they love it. You know, they're huge into futsal. They think it's incredible. I think it's good. I think one of the problems with some of the futsal leagues around here, they're done on a basketball court and it's not the size, especially at the younger age groups. It's not real. I don't know what the regulation size is, but it almost seems like too small and the ball's out of bounds the whole time. And so the utility of it constantly being out of bounds isn't that great. But from a foot skill perspective, I think it's great. I mean, I think it's you have to think quickly, you know, because you don't have as much time on the ball, and you know, it's again playing. You know, it's the more you play, the better you're going to get. So I would never tell someone not to play futsal, and I would encourage it. You know, I think they should. You know, I think it'd be kind of neat to have some more futsal leagues, maybe even outdoor. You know, and build it up. You know, I know sand soccer is another thing that you know, a lot of players really enjoy. They go to Virginia Beach for that tournament and have a good time. You know, playing's playing, you know, and so you know, futsal, you can show off some other skill that you wouldn't necessarily do on a field too as well.
Well, we talked a little bit about parents earlier, and you've always been really good at helping parents. Even my son, who didn't play at Arlington, you're always very helpful and gave good instruction and good direction in terms of mentoring parents and also helping them mentor their kids. What is the best way for a parent to support their child that wants to be a player? And I know one thing you're probably going to say is, well, you know, the player himself's got to want to be a player, so it can't be about the parent. But generally, how do you counsel parents to that want to invest or at least to improve their kids' soccer ability?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is to be very positive, because often coaches, you know, their job is to be a little bit critical, right? And point out the things that the kid has to the player needs to get better at. So the coach is already doing that aspect. So the parents, first off, no matter what, I mean, we've got some I'm a competitive parent. You have to be very positive at home. And that, you know, this is again why kids might, you know, quit, you know, so very, very positive at home, you know, supportive. You know, I think your job as a parent, I looked at my job as give my kid the opportunities. whether it be going to a DC United game or watching an EPL game, or, playing rec or going and playing futsal, or, play super wide. Give my child as many opportunities as he wants, he or she, or I have sons, but as he wanted. You can't, I think some parents, especially if it's your first and your oldest kid, at U9 and U10, they're a little too focused. They can't be focused on the wrong things. At the end of the day, at U9, U10, 11, the kids are still sorting things out. Some of them, the light comes on early, whatever. At that juncture, the game score doesn't matter. Worry about, is my son or daughter having a good time? Are they getting better? Are they getting good playing time? And is the coach teaching them something? Are they learning? Are they progressing? And so the focus needs to be there and not on, sometimes you got parents that are looking at a stopwatch. Well, my kid only played 13 minutes this half, or, you're only playing, you're playing my kid here or there, or this or that, or you guys didn't win these games. You should be winning. You're not winning these tournaments. Why aren't, whatever. It's got to be on the development of the kid and the fun in the beginning, or they'll burn out later or leave. So I think it's being supportive, positive, and giving them the opportunities, trusting the coaches. I mean, obviously, not every coach is created equal, but there are some great coaches in this area on multiple clubs, but, finding the right fit for their child and supporting them,
And is there a role for the parent if he's unhappy with what's going on? Should he approach the coach, and how exactly should he do so, or he or she do so if they choose to?
Yeah, I mean, every coach is a little different. I have no problem with that as a coach. I think the most important thing is how you do it and when you do it. And there's typically, the 24-hour rule. Don't approach, because as a parent, if something went on in that game, you're going to be just irate, and the coach is still thinking about the game, and to ambush the coach right after the game for whatever, it's almost never productive. So maybe the next day. So I think there is a role, and some of these kids can't advocate for themselves as much as we would like. We do try to, when we were coaching, TJ and I, we were always trying to tell the kids they had to solve their own problems, because that was one of the things about American players. They couldn't solve quick decision, in a game. They weren't solving problems quick enough. We had the athletes, but we were losing because we couldn't see the field or make quicker decisions. So we always would encourage the kids to solve their own problems, and it's their career. So you want to let the kid try to, but the reality is some of them can't. They can't advocate for themselves, and the parent, until maybe they get a little bit older. Even some of the older kids don't advocate as well, and it's a personality thing. But I think, the parent can, but the tact in how they say it, and they need to be thoughtful about what they're really complaining about, and what it is. And if it's not a good fit, then move the kid. That's not a problem. I mean, it happens all the time. There should be no one. It should be all good. It should, at the end of the day, it's got to be about the player.
Yeah, I always say, and again, as you know, I did not play soccer, and I came to it late. I didn't start really following until my son played. I was a basketball guy and coach. About if you gave like 5 basketball coaches 10 players, they would agree on 8 or 10 of those players, and there wouldn't be a lot of. If you give 5 soccer coaches 10 players, they would agree on maybe 5 of those players. Soccer is one of those sports where everyone sees the game completely differently. I've never seen a sport where style of play, personal taste. It's one of those games where coaches, and it can all be good coaches, can view the exact same player differently. It doesn't really happen in some of the other sports that I've been interested in.
Well, there's also 11 players versus 5.
Yeah.
But it's a fair point. I mean, there's a lot of these players. Lauren Flynn, who's a great player from Arlington, she was always a striker. I coached her for a few years. She was always a striker, and she goes to Florida State and wins a national championship as a starting center back. So the coach turned her into a center back. I don't think she'd ever played center back on her club teams. So yeah, you can move a good soccer player. You can move in a lot of different positions, and those positions kind of affect, their play to an extent, the types of play, and the style of play can be completely different. It can be kick and run, it could be possession. So that makes a huge difference in what kind of players they want. You could have a defensive minded coach versus an offensive minded coach, and that affects things. But it's a valid point. I never thought about it that way, but I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so how about coaching girls versus coaching boys? Um, do you think like at Arlington or any other club that coaches should do both, or do you think what makes a girls coach effective might be different than what makes a boys coach effective?
I don't think I think it's important to fit. I mean, I think there's certain coaches that do better with older age groups versus younger, some that do better with boys teams versus girls teams. And I don't think you should necessarily make one coach both. Because I don't think every coach is, I think it varies. You know, I mean, I learned after a long time, my sweet spot is I really like the middle age groups, the seventh, eighth, ninth grade. That's where I enjoy. I feel like I make the biggest impact. So I feel that's where I enjoy coaching. So you want to put the coach where they're gonna, you know, some coaches don't like to do the U9s and U10s, you know. So and the boys and girls teams are a little bit different. You know, the boys, you know, I've coached on both sides, you know, the way the players kind of interact is just a little bit different. So I think you have to have the fit, and it has to be, you know, coach specific.
And what is the role for high school soccer? So like, you know, my son wasn't going to play high school soccer because we heard it was just all physical kick and run, and it didn't sound like something that he would enjoy. But he ended up having an amazing experience when he gave it a shot. It was a time 3 or 4 years ago where the DA players weren't even playing high school soccer at all. And then the emphasis was away from high school soccer. And then it seems like some areas of the state, like in Loudoun County, the top players don't play high school. Arlington, Fairfax, depending upon the coach and the teammates, they do play. Some areas they play, like in Virginia, they play in the spring, which is rare. I think there's only 4 states where they play high school in the spring. Most states, like in Maryland, DC, and in private schools, even in Virginia, they play soccer in the fall. What is the role of high school soccer? Do you believe in it? Do you think kids should play, high level players should play, and all those kind of issues?
Well, I actually, when at WNL in Yorktown used to play with the private schools. So when I was a freshman and sophomore in high school, we played in the fall. And then we joined the Fairfax leagues, and then switched my junior and senior year. So I got to do both actually. But I think we should be playing in the fall, because there's, like, my kid would love to play lacrosse. He had played lacrosse when he was younger, and he could never really play lacrosse because soccer was always at the same time. And I think there's more synergies between soccer and lacrosse than there is soccer and football in some ways. I think kids should play high school without question. They love it. I mean, it's my boys, they had so much fun, you know, because it's the school spirit, you know, and I feel like some of the school spirit from, you know, even in football and basketball, from when it doesn't seem the same as, maybe I'm just being, you know, my generation, whatever, but it doesn't seem the same. And I think you need, in not having those kids play, I think it takes away from that. They love being around their peers. You know, their friends in the stands watching them. They're in a stadium with a whole bunch of fans watching, you know. And I mean, I think they absolutely should be able to play. I think the problem is, you know, some of these leagues that are saying, well, you can't play, and I understand why. They don't want injuries, and the high level travel teams would typically beat almost any high school team, you know, the very high level. But going back to earlier, you know, we're talking about how many kids actually were going to go play college ball. It's not a huge number, you know, and so we're restricting a lot of these kids that, even if they were to play college ball, you know, if they play a high school, you know, of course they could get hurt, but it's not going to affect their play in college, you know, and let them play. You know, to me, it's playing is playing. The thing that I think could improve things is, I don't think there's enough communication between the clubs and the high school coaches, and to save these kids' legs. And that's another reason why I think there's some injuries, because the high school coach should be asking, you know, did you play? How many games did you have this weekend? Oh, you had a tournament. You played 3 games this weekend. All right. Well, Monday we're going to do PKs and corner kicks, set pieces. So we're not going to kill your legs, or we're only going to practice 2 or 3 days this week. You know, I don't know if all these high school athletic directors realize the travel coaches in all these sports are the ones developing these kids. They've been playing travel since they're 9, 8, you know, so all of that development is not happening in a very short high school season. It's been happening over many years from the travel programs. So there's no reason that they have to practice 5 days a week in a high school. They're already practicing. They go from one practice to the other. So it's unnecessary, and that coordination, I think, should happen between them, and it shouldn't be us versus them. Oh, your travel coach said this, or your high school coach said this. I think they should be working together to save these kids' legs so there's less injuries. But I absolutely think they should play high school ball. There's no recruiting there. College coaches do not go to high school games, but I just think you can't get that back, and I played for WNL for 4 years. It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We did have a Division III school that was at some of our games, because when Chandler reached out, they said, yeah, we were at some of the Yorktown games. We saw you. So because I think there were so many pretty good players on our team, but I think obviously you're right. You're not going to get a whole lot of high level colleges scouting one high school game, but they can go to a soccer fest or a
Showcase.
what do they call them, and there's 20 games going on where they can get all those players at once. So hey, another question that I had is, your kids basically all play Arlington travel.
Yep.
And my son, for example, played for a couple of other clubs, and he most of his time he was at Alexandria, but he played at Joga and Barstow as well. He got some different experiences. What do you think about kids that play for one club? Do you think kids should maybe a style of play, or they should go other places, or do you think within a club there are different styles of play, different coaches? You can basically get what you want, and it's just more convenient just to stick with one club. Do you have any opinion of that, or you think it's more of a personal decision?
I think it's a personal decision. I think it depends on what the aspirations of the player is. The style of play is all on the coach, right? And not every coach has the same style per se. Some clubs, Alexandria, I think, does a pretty good job of trying to have a style of play, at least at their younger age groups. That's, I don't want to say mandated, but more similar. But I'm not sure I've gone anywhere where I've played against any club where I'm like, oh, okay, this is definitely this club, and I can tell from their style of play. I think it's coach specific, player specific. So, from that perspective, I don't think it matters, but I think it's, there's pros and cons to both sides. The pro is you know all the other coaches, they know who you are, and then a lot of the players, you're comfortable. The con is you don't get exposure elsewhere, to a whole bunch of different clubs that are probably run a little bit differently just because they're different.
Yeah. Well, Coach, this has been great. One more question. I know you have a younger son. How old is your youngest son?
He's a freshman in high school.
So what's next in youth soccer? Do you see any other developments down the road, or if on the other hand, what would you like to see of ways that things could be changed to make it better for players, maybe parents, and also coaches?
I mean, I feel like it's become an arms war, and I think money's become too big of a part of this. Everybody's trying to make more money, and I kind of wish it'd go back. I think in simpler times, I mean, back then you could also play other sports, which I think, was fine for the high level kids that are going to go on and play, MLS or, an ACC D1 school. Is a little different, right? But that's a smaller pool of players. And that's from the entire country. It's not only within our, Northern Virginia as an example. But I don't know what's next. I mean, it keeps every year it changes. I can't keep up with the leagues. It's there's probably 6 or 7 leagues right now, and I'm used to having one. So I would hope that it would centralize a little bit better. They need to pick one and establish it. They need to figure out how to pull out the really, really top echelon kids earlier and put them into some kind of residential academy. I think would be, and probably because one of the biggest problems for the U.S. is geographically it's so large, right? So that makes it difficult. So maybe they, do it regionally. You have 4 of these regional, camps, and the kids actually go there, and that's all they do. But that would have to be for the very, very cream of the crop, the top of the top players in the country. But I would like to see it just simplify a little bit and not be too I don't know. It's too competitive right now from a parents and the kid. Not competitive from wanting to win a games. I got no problem with that. It's more the, well, I got to go here. I'm going to move to this club and this and that, and this club. Well, we're going to do this, and this club we're going to make a new club. That kind of thing.
Great. Well, Coach, well, look, thanks for all your time, but really thank you for all the all your work. And I mean, a lot of times it's been volunteer because you weren't paid much in the early days, but all the kids that you've helped, and you're very passionate about Arlington, but you're even more passionate about the kids that you coach. It always comes through. And even the ones like my son, you didn't coach, you always are very supportive and things that we did. So thanks for all that you did. I can't wait till you get to play again together this spring. Hopefully they'll have another good season. But I just really appreciate you doing this, and I really appreciate all the work you've done with kids all these years.
Thank you. It's been a passion, and I've loved every minute of. I love hearing from the kids that I've coached in the past and see how they're doing. It's definitely a very rewarding profession.
Maybe one day you'll get back into it after a couple of years off. So
yeah, I've been off I retired in Memorial Day basically. So we'll see.
Yeah, you'll see. Yeah. All right. Well, Coach. Well, thanks again. And
thank you.
Obviously, we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.